All right, let's go ahead and call the Mauldin City Council Budget Workshop to order. The time is 6:11. We did not start early. Members present are Mr. Taft Matney, Michael Reynolds, Diane Kusnar, Mr. Frank Allgood, and Mayor Merritt, all present. Ms. King will not be joining us this evening as she's had a family medical emergency. So keep her and her family in thoughts and prayers as she deals with that over the next hours and days, I'm sure. Mr. Praline hopefully will show. If not, we'll work to his comments at the city council meeting. Okay, so this was going to be pretty brief. We had just a couple of items we need to cover. Much of it was covered in your last memorandum that Mr. Madden sent out, but we had a fee schedule that was not present at the last workshop that you should have since seen. We had a couple items to discuss further, one of them being the chamber, the allotted amount for the chamber, what we'll allot for this year's budget, and what the expectations will be for that, and anything else that you guys have questions, comments, or concerns about. So the floor is yours.
But we also had on here, we had talked about the millage increase.
We were.
So I don't know if y'all want to start at the beginning and then do this or
Go off of the memorandum.
sure.
That is fine with me. Okay, so you have in this packet the budget memorandum 4-2. City council inquiries. The first ones were current business license revenues. That was included in there. Any questions on that particular item? Attachment one.
Just an update. I had sent Mr. Madden a email. I think part of that question was coming from me, and I basically didn't explain it. I was trying to get a number of businesses that get licensed through the city and try to correlate total business owners in the city of Mauldin with chamber membership.
Okay.
So I did receive those numbers from Mr. Madden and I guess from David's department. And really what he gave me was really all the detail I needed to run my little mathematical model numbers. And I'll take the Holly approach because I'm very conservative. Just okay when we get there.
All right. Hearing nothing else on that. Duplicate pages, those were corrected. Okay, millage or tax increases potentially.
Okay. Well, you know, thinking of the way things in our country are going right now, and gas prices, food shortages, expenses of foods, things like that going up, I would probably not be in favor of a millage increase this year. And especially because it sounds like those with a homestead exemption are still going to be impacted some. I don't know how much though. I don't know, like a millage, how much is that on like 100,000? Do you know?
The value of one meal is every $1,000 in assessed value. So their first 50,000, they're just not going to count. So if the millage goes up, depending on how much the house is assessed at, I mean, they'll get it reduced. They won't have to worry about the first 50,000, but after that, they're going to be taxed. So it's a chance, you know, you're disabled at a certain age, and you receive that exemption, you still would have an increase. It wouldn't be as much as someone who's not exempt.
but they are currently already exempt. So they're, right?
Yeah, the first 50,000.
Or first 50,000, so it would be an increase regardless.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, but versus, we're gonna start charging them for trash, to be on their water bill or whatever every month versus something that may end up being cheaper once a year.
Is that a hypothetical? We're charging for trash pickup next year?
No, that was one of the discussions that Ms. King said that maybe we should have a trash pickup fee instead of millage increase. And then we talked about the homestead exemption. Maybe they wouldn't feel the millage increase, but based on the value of their home, I guess. I just don't know which would be cheaper.
I heard an example too, I won't speak for him, but what a consideration would be, what if we put a new initial impact fee on a homeowner? So in other words, if you're going to buy a home in a residential area, the first year you'll pay $100 fee. And for that, we'll deliver the trash can and we'll start picking up of course, we're going to pick up your trash. But we would deliver the trash can. And I don't remember the discussion included the cost of the trash can, or if it would be the $100 plus the cost of the trash can. I think it was included the cost of the trash can.
I also think it was larger than $100.
I think it was.
That was part of it, Mr. Craig.
Okay. So that was an idea for new homes that we're not going to get their first year tax until next year. Instead of just picking up the garbage and giving them where they're going to buy the trash can. Instead of just picking up the garbage, they're not going to pay anything for the first X number of months before the tax hits them next year. That might be a way of doing it. It's still money out of your pocket. You can call it, I've had this discussion with Councilman Bob years ago. A fee is still money out of my pocket. So a tax or a fee is still money out of my pocket as a citizen or homeowner.
You just have to figure out which way it's going to be less impactful on the senior citizens, my opinion.
And to that point, I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, if a fee is instituted, therefore we are putting into place what the parameters are, you could make the parameters so that the parameters don't impact the senior citizens. Whereas with this millage increase by law, we would still only get that first $50,000. No? You're shaking your head.
Well, I mean, I believe because the fee's gonna go on a tax bill, I do not believe that's a service that Greenville County would do as exempting, because they're not gonna know either that they're senior citizens or not.
Okay.
That's true. And then what if that person dies or moves to assisted living or something and the kids move in? We don't know who's going to police it. So, you know. That was all I had on me.
I just think we need to be careful of fees and who they impact, the equity impact of it.
If they happen to impact everyone, is what you're saying.
No, he's talking about the Supreme Court decision striking down Greenville County's, or part of Greenville County's road fee and the public safety telecommunications fee, because the fee should apply, or the people who pay the fee should be getting the benefit of the fee, as opposed to a lot of people who paid the fee. It was seen that they weren't getting the benefit. So it really became a tax and they had to do away with it. Part of it, not all of it, some of it.
Do they have to reimburse people?
No,
No.
that they never came back and said that. No, they just had to quit collecting the fee from that point on.
No.
Well, it's coming back. They'll call it something else. A fee is coming.
Well, there's a bill working through the legislature now that would change the language back to, I think it was 1992 language that would actually allow it. So.
Well, again, at the time that we decide if we're going to do something, we need to see what the millage rate would be and what charging fees would be, see which one is less impactful. Probably for everyone, but
Just keep in mind, we have the lowest millage fee in the upstate.
I know
And
that, and
also-
we've not raised it since, what year? I mean, I don't know.
12, 14 years ago.
So we'll still be the lowest.
Could be, unless we leapfrog. There's a formula on how much we can raise.
Yeah.
But the other side of it is most of you saw a graph in one of our budget that Mr. Madden projected out. At some point in time, our basic service fees, our basic cost of services that we give our citizens today will exceed our revenue based on millage and business license. So somebody gonna have to step up to the plate.
Yeah.
And, it's, every 2 years is always somebody's election cycle. And that's the argument I've heard for many years.
So what are you saying, you would do
Let's
it
not
this year?
discuss it during my election cycle. That's right, the idea that's for the better of the city. It hurts my election.
So you would do it this year?
I
What would-
say that.
Okay.
I talked
Well,
around
it's
the whole
not an
issue.
election
I'm like,
cycle. I thought I was assuming.
No, I'm just saying that's what I've heard in the past. And I'd have to go pull Mr. Madden's chart out. I can't remember, but it's not too far off into the future.
Well, people don't realize, I hear all this crap about, it's all about the money. The city just would, they're bringing in all these homes and business, they just want the money. And I'm like, okay, what money? Tax money. I said, do you realize tax money goes to pick up your trash? It pays for the police, it pays for the fire, plus other things. I mean, how do you keep good people, because you're not gonna be able to pay them if at some point you don't raise the taxes?
We've been very fortunate that we've been able to live off of growth. And for those people who have criticized us for annexing and allowing new homes, my point to them is simply this. The homes can be built outside of the city, and we have no say in it, and we receive none of the benefit, or we annex the land into the city at the property owner's request, and we get some of that financial benefit, and we get a say in what it looks like and how it's going to develop. I would much rather us be in that situation than it just be sprawl.
If I may ask a follow-up question regarding fees, if what Mr. Crayland had brought up before, which was a fee for new homeowners, would we not be able to know if they're new homeowners as well?
I think when that was discussed, it was more along the lines of developmental. It's like a development coming on into the city. There is what I understood that discussion to be about, was a new subdivision development. Their first year would be X dollar amount impact/development fee to the homeowner.
Yeah, not like a first-time buyer.
Right.
If we start going down the road of talking impact fees, I would strongly suggest that we bring the Home Builders Association in to talk about that. Just from the standpoint of, the numbers are showing now that for every $1,000 that's added onto the price of a new home, you're pricing out 414 people from home ownership just in the Greenville-Spartanburg market. We don't have a lot of inventory as it is, and with 250,000 people moving into Greenville County over the next 20 years, we've got to have a place for people to live, and they've got to be able to afford to live here. So, I mean, there's a real balance. I don't think that I can support an impact.
You support tax bills increase. That's rhetorical.
And well, the rhetorical answer is when we get to where the cost of goods and services exceeds the revenue that we are able to bring in, and we can't control that anymore, then you get to a tipping point. And, there's just a month and a half, 2 months ago that we were hearing reports of 40-year high on inflation, and reports are today that we've now passed that. So we're now more than 40-year high on inflation.
To that point, the cities, all that means is that speeds up the graph that Mr.
It does.
Merrick is referring to.
It does. But then again, it also goes back to something that Diane said a couple of minutes ago. With what people in their homes are dealing with now at their own kitchen tables with their own wallets. Because if the powers that be start pumping the brakes too much and trying to rein in inflation, then we're potentially looking at triggering another massive recession that's going to make life a whole heck of a lot harder for people. So we've got to figure out, and I don't have a magic 8 ball that tells me what's going on, but I think we've got to be very cognizant of what people are dealing with in their homes too.
Well, to that point, as presented, the budget does not have a millage increase, a fee, tax, impact, anything of the sort. Next year's capital projects, I said it in the last one, concern me greatly. I mean, I think we're fooling ourselves and looking and thinking that we'll be able to make up a $6 million difference in 1 year. And that's what it is. There won't be federal money to help soften the blow.
So if you went up a mill versus what if you are looking in the future and you're going, oh, in the future, when we decide we're going to have to increase, we may have to go 2 mil, 3 mil. That'll really hurt more than slowly increase.
What's the value of a mill?
I don't know the exact, but it's like 111, 118,000. And it may be a little different than that now. I'd have to get you the exact value now. But it was, I believe when I looked at it, the last time it was asked, it was around 118, maybe 120 something.
Yeah, Michael, you were talking about, making up that difference from 1 year to another. The state's chief economist, Frank Rainwater, gave the Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office presentation to the Senate Finance Committee earlier this week, and Senate Finance started taking up the budget. And you hit on something that he pointed out in his presentation, that the state has achieved a tremendous amount of unexpected growth financially. And a lot of it has been because of the federal money that has been pumped in, whether it's PPP, whether it's stimulus checks, all of those things that have cycled through the state's economy that are now in the process of cycling out and will not be there to pad for next year. So growth will still be there, but not nearly at the rate that the state, and I know that I'm catching state versus municipal government, but that level of growth won't be there next year. So it's up to Holly.
You get that figured out? Thank you. One of the things we talked about is surplus from the current budget year would be automatically going ahead and planning to use surpluses from this year rather than putting money in the coffers necessarily. We start on capital projects for fiscal 24.
Yeah, allotment for general fund balancing and capital out of, whatever we are able to add back, from this school year. It would just be earmarked. It wouldn't be like, it would fall under the assigned, but it would be assigned for fiscal year 24.
And that's,
Saying,
that is a great way to soften that blow because it could be anywhere from 0 to.
Sometimes we do that, I think, in September, October, November, when we get the final audited
Right.
projection and Holly gives her semi-final numbers. That, hey, look, if we decide that, and then she notes it, and we make a budget amendment before the end of the fiscal budget 2023. I think that's how we've done it in the past, sometimes waiting on how good a year did we have, and then based on recommendations, 1%, 2%, and whatever funds we put in for the rainy day.
When I think coming to that point, our rainy day fund is healthier than the bulk of the cities in the entire state. So I don't know necessarily that we need to rainy day stuff. I think we're at the point we need to look and say, how do we plan from having a leaky roof on a rainy day? And that's what you'd be doing if you're using some of that surplus, or the bulk of the surplus to park in on capital projects. Am I saying that as you would agree?
Yeah. I just think that we're probably, it's not gonna only be needed for capital projects. It's gonna be needed, for the budget.
That's the question.
Yeah, that's not as optimistic as I was thinking. Okay, so therein lies the question. Do we look at a millage increase this year, or do we pass on it and wait till next year?
Well, it would affect their taxes January 2023.
It'll be on their tax bills that we know. November.
I believe we're able to recapture a few years. Mr. Madden would be better versed in that than me, obviously, but I believe we would be limited to 9 mills in a single year, recapturing 5 from the previous or something like that.
Well, there's a formula, but you would have a cap with a look back, since you haven't. Since the city
The current year and 3 years look back.
But it
Okay.
can't exceed a certain percentage either.
That's what I was thinking. There's
I don't think there's a.
But there's not a cap.
It's just, it's just the current year plus 3 years look back.
They're gonna cap how much you can raise in 1 year, but you still have that look back. And, but what may help is if, I'll perform just an analysis and show what it would look like if you did raise it, whether it's to the cap, plus look back. And then that way you can see the amount that you would have.
I can send that out. We did that in the, workshop, so I have it.
Yeah, the additional amount of revenue the city could raise or enhance with the millage increase.
Just realize we're in our 3rd budget workshop, so we're a significant way into this process. So now we're talking about changing lots of numbers.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind, because we'll have to have 2 readings prior to June 30th.
The cap applies to the operating millage. You can raise debt millage without a cap. Obviously, that was tied to debt.
And that's a separate line item on the tax bill.
It's tough. It's tough, but, something that may have to come at some point. Sooner, later, I don't know.
Well, to that point, staff is here to be instructed by us on what we want the budget to look like. So I guess we'll get that analysis and go from there. Any more thoughts?
Only that from a personnel standpoint, there are other local governments who are doing a really good job at attracting employees away from other governmental entities by upping the numbers that they offer. And we're continuing to fall behind very quickly in comparison to those. So from a recruitment and retention standpoint, we're going to have to take a hard look at that, and that's going to mean a financial investment on the city's part, unless we want to just become a training ground.
Well, and to that point, is that the only way I would be looking that I can support necessarily a millage increase is looking at how we can support our employees better financially by doing it. For me, it would need to be wrapped up in there somehow, whether it's a cold increase, whether it's across the board, whatever it is, because retaining is important as well. And we all know it's a lot more expensive to hire another employee than it is to keep the good one you have already.
And to that regard, I think we agreed not too long ago that comp and class study needed to be done sometime soon. So don't get the cart before the horse. We might come out shining examples with a golden strip, not the diamond tip. David Compton.
Okay, is there any more instruction from Ms. Abercrombie as we move forward?
The only question I had, I couldn't find my email. I think Mr. Madden explained it or sent back, but I was asking earlier about our H&A projection for next year is $1,150,000. Of that, how much of it have we already committed through bond interest, bridge interest, wherever we've committed H&A? Are we exceeding that $1,150,000 projection that would result to us going into the fund balance? I hope I'm using the right terminology. To pay for all of it, or because I remember a few years ago, she warned us that if we keep tagging things on H&A, one day we will exceed H&A. So have we tagged everything out of H&A that's getting us close to that cap?
The budget has fund balance being.
So our expenses out of H&A are going to exceed our projected revenue from H&A.
You remember the number? I remember the
245,727. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm dumb. I'm in the wrong column. 162,981.
And the flip side of that is.
I don't know why I was in the middle column. I have no idea.
What page is that on?
Should be. That is page 45.
One other caveat to that is, there are times when your revenues come in higher than what's projected, and then you would not go into.
That's what I was actually about to say. So I mean, even if you look at what we budgeted in 22 and what 21 was actually, we're budgeting less than. That's
We're projecting less revenue.
exactly. And I will come back to, from a revenue standpoint, I can appreciate this ever-present conservative nature there as well.
So actually, we budgeted more for the use of the fund balance for H&A
Last
in the
year,
current year than we are for next year.
I believe, I'd have to go double check, but I believe that was because of a project in the, was larger. They're only doing like 75 this year versus the big renovation down there. So that's part of it.
Once that project is completed, then that money comes back on. You see what I'm saying? The expenditure is no longer there. Won't be there next year.
It's not, it's a one-time, not a recurring.
Yeah.
It's one time.
While we are on revenues, another piece that we've been doing over the last couple of years is having in our budget ordinance our schedule of fees, which we didn't have this document at the last meeting. I'm sure we'll see this. This is every fee that the city charges, all the way from BDS fees to commission fees, development fees, all of them. The remaining fees from last year to this year on the fee schedule, correct? Other than the trash can fee that we talked about yesterday.
Trash can and then the additional cultural center fees.
Yes, sir.
Did we set a fee for the recycle roll cart, or so there's an asterisk there and it's going to automatically adjust to be commensurable with the current cost of the city? Or did we pick a number and stick it in there?
Yeah, we have a number in there,
Which
but then
is,
we asterisked it to say that it'll increase as our cost increases, $48.76. $40.
I thought we talked about like 50, 55 bucks too.
Yeah.
We looked at what the cost is to us currently, and that's what's in here.
Whatever the at cost is for the city, that's
what's in there. I mean, we can do whatever you would like.
Well, I think our trash roll cart, we had to source them from a different source, which drove our costs up. I think it was above the $65 by a few pennies. Because we had to go to a separate source.
During this past year, we couldn't get the state contract cans because they were so backordered. We ended up having to buy cans from Toter. And those cans were more expensive than what we charged for.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
These are the real trash cans you're saying on that, or?
Yeah, we charged 65 for
Yeah.
the ones from Schaefer, but when we bought the ones from Toter, they were higher than 65.
So I guess that was a suggestion, instead of just tying it to the cost, pick a number. It's arbitrary, $55, $50 or whatever. It was worth it. I'm also on fixed income.
Is that your suggestion, 55?
Just food for thought, as council should.
Yeah, I mean, I tell somebody, yeah, it's gonna be $48.76, so they're like, what?
Well, they already kind of pay odd cents because they'll come in and swipe it on the card and there's a convenience fee that's added, so.
Now, so question about the little bins. Is the recycle eventually also gonna be alarm? So the bins, somebody's gonna have to get out and do the bins. You're gonna do away with the bins, tell them not doing this anymore. So I know my neighbor's out. I'm like, shoot, no, we fill ours up. We need big. In your,
People with a little bit of come and buy the food cans right now, while they're still $25.
That's right.
There was a question on the sewer tap fee and how that compared to our neighbor. Remember, is it variable?
So
top of my head, the difference, I'm sure it's substantially lower.
Yeah, the city's sewer tap is
About 10.
regardless of the number, like for apartment complex, it still would be that price. Instead of per house, per door.
You do it per building normally.
Yeah, per building.
That's on the taps. Rewild is a different model.
That's like capacity.
See that?
Yeah, so you would have a tap and capacity fee, you would have to add to the loss.
Or Greenville Water System, or Metro. Yeah, they are.
But the tap fees under EDS gone up. Sewer tap fee.
They're probably not listed under BDS.
Just on this schedule, it's on the last page. On that schedule. The 510 or a residential.
Yep, you got it.
So without doing a direct home builder or development fee or something like that, I believe it would be prudent to look and make sure our fees are at least comparable to our neighboring cities. The service is basically the same. That would also only impact your new development participants.
On that last page, it has that the work performed without a permit pertains to what?
Sometimes someone will start building something without getting a permit. Catch them. Someone need to come in and get a permit.
So it's not applying to the sewer tap fee or the encroachment fee.
It could. They are. So an example would be, and we actually had this with one of our neighborhoods with Highland Chase. They went out there and started forming pads and all that stuff before they ever got permits for the first homes they were doing. And we saw they were doing that. And so they came in and got permits and got charged up. Which was not much off their back. They were just anxious to get out there and get stuff working.
So the footnote could apply to anything under BDS fees. That's my point. It reads as if it's stormwater drainage, the footnote, but I was just trying to see what it tied back to. So all, any work that would normally require a permit is subject to being charged twice then. Okay.
Do we know if our neighbors have higher fees?
Yeah, like to get a tap at Metro is $1,100. That's just the connection fee, not the capacity.
Residential.
For a single family residence, $1,100.
And it's all under the same place.
Oh, yeah, that's correct. That's Metro's cut.
And I think their monthly fee is a lot higher than ours.
Yes, and it's use based. It's use.
It's a volume charge.
Yeah, volume charge based on your water use.
Do you have any idea as far as neighboring cities, what they charge?
I can find that out for you.
When you think neighboring cities, are you like more like Greenville or Thought?
I would say something.
Okay.
And of course, Greer is different because they've got a full CPW that provides multiple services. Sure.
David, how many homes would we have brought online last year? Yeah.
I know.
Was it
Come
27?
back to me.
I was gonna say
Tuesday.
2,500 is what I was remembering.
You gave me a note too, and I used it in one of those presentations. I think it was 2,700, but I could be rounding that number up or something else.
I'm gonna look at the last, monthly report. Here, give me in 2 minutes.
So what Matt's gonna give us is a neighboring cities sewer monthly fee plus sewer tap.
And my only point is, I remember the 2,500 number. I don't know if that's correct, but we probably brought 2,500 homes last year, maybe 2,000. And we've been in line with just what our neighboring city is. You're $1 million in revenue, and you've just been competitive with neighboring cities.
Now, are you asking me how many homes have been constructed?
Yes, sir.
So probably in the last year, we're looking at 300 or 400 homes been constructed.
Okay.
We currently have plus homes under construction.
So by the same token, let's say we were bringing on 400 some odd homes, they're still at $250,000 in sewer, had we just been comparable to our.
Yeah, and Simpsonville's is, they do tap and capacity. So their tap is 500, but their capacity would be 700. So to tap on for a single family would be $1,200.
Let's say the tap fee's 500 and what?
And capacity.
And-
Like you're essentially buying capacity in their sewer line.
Right.
So that's what was considered their connection fee. So it's a total suite of $1,200. Metros was a lot.
Seemed like one of the roller associations here in upstate and projected that the builders are reporting because of construction material and the cost that they were going to cut back on the actual number of homes built. So maybe they planned 100. They were probably only going to build, projecting to build. I'm making this number up, 75% of them because they can't get build materials and the cost is adding up to the point that's pricing them beyond what their target market was to be. And I can't quote the source. I read that, but it was one of the little organizations here in the upstate.
I look at those numbers of what we get in as far as what they're reporting, their construction costs are. And while I don't know exactly what their land acquisition and land development costs are, I guess that. And then what they're selling the home for, it's still a decent profit. $50,000 a home.
I think my point that we're not even comparable to our neighbors, at least in that particular line item, in multiple ways. Not just because we don't charge a capacity, but we're not charging actually even the same tap fee. So when we start talking about having capital projects and stuff like that, sewer is always a big one. There's always a truck to buy, and there's always a camera to buy, lines to replace. So I would encourage us looking at that, at least minimum that particular fee. You're also not affecting an elderly couple who is on fixed income.
Well, now I don't know because the 55 and older homes, I don't remember.
I agree, but I always find it interesting because the elderly captive is typically much better off than the younger, but whatever.
Well, okay, but you consider that some of these people are on social security only. And maybe their house is paid for, but their medication, they take a lot more medication sometimes than the younger people. And, you know, that they have to decide whether they're gonna eat or get their medication.
I just always find it interesting that that's just.
I know, but I think there's an age at where you kind of maybe, I just know my mother was, her source was Social Security and a little bitty pension.
Well, according to the Biden administration, in authorizing the second booster, they're targeting the elderly for the second booster, defining that as 50. I'm sorry, I take offense.
Well, I'm offended too.
Holly wants to say something so bad right now.
It really doesn't bother me at all that you're offended.
Look at all the discounts we get, right? I couldn't wait.
They
till-
raised the discounts to 85. You gotta be 85 to get some of the discounts.
Well, yeah, some of them, but I forgot where we went the other day and I said, hey, we can get a senior discount here. We got like $2 off. I was like, woohoo.
We may have to take more medication for our physical illness, us elderly people, but we don't spend near as much money on our mental health and grief counselors. Because we know we're close to that.
So David, in the same point, I would say, having BDS look at your fees as compared to neighboring communities would be an interesting analysis before we, again, if Simpsonville or Greenville, or whoever it is charging $300 for the exact same service that we're doing, is that something that we need to address, that we can do on the fee schedule without talking about ad valorem taxes?
Have we ever looked at volume charge for sewer?
Not since I've been here.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I like the way it is now because I know good and well if we switch to a volume charge, the 18-year-old that spends an hour in the shower, that's going to get really expensive really fast.
Why do they do that?
I don't know. He sits there and sings for an hour though.
I remember Caitlin's online.
But to your point, it's a much better way to make it inequitable. Exactly. We'll have to swim with water. I got a much fairer, more equitable way to tie the consumption and usage. So I would encourage,
We'll look at it.
thank you. Any others?
I have the room rental fees that we have for the cultural center. Do they ever get used? Like, so I mean, they're
My question was going to be is how often do they get used for things like the amphitheater, the auditorium, the meeting room space? And whether or not that fee was too high or too low?
They get used quite a bit, the auditorium, not so much during the season, during, this construction. Now, they get rented out quite a bit.
Probably more so, in rooms as opposed to auditorium and amphitheater.
Sure.
Draw your attention to the third note. Under culture food, page 50.
Which is the third note? Studio.
Under notice.
Notes.
Hotel room.
Any other thoughts on the fee schedule?
If those areas are being well utilized, then we're cool. I was bringing it up if they were not being utilized, if that fee was cost prohibitive, I'd go lower to get people to use it. But if it's being well used, there's.
I think the demand exceeds supply sometimes in this. Now that we're getting most of the renovations done on that. We had the falling floor for a while. We had to move staff across the hallway to take what was then called the veterans room. And once it got fixed, we moved them back, but we didn't move out. So now they've got both rooms. So you had one less room to rent if you want to choose to do that. So it's a growth problem. We got that in several places. The only thing on recreation, I had made a note that our differential from resident to non-resident is $20 on everything except cheerleading was only $10. And summer camp, so baseball fields is no minimum, it's just per hour.
That's because it's more expensive than the others too, maybe.
Which one?
Cheerleading.
That's why I was getting ready to ask what the cost difference would be.
I think it's if they have a uniform or a new uniform, if some years they buy it, and other years they use the one prior. They reuse their uniform, but if they have to buy another one, it's been a long time since I've sat in on those discussions.
Because baseball, softball, football, and all of our other sports, they have jerseys provided every season.
Because it's more but less that a cheerleader has to wear. Does that make sense?
Maybe it should fall in line with the others, the non-resident.
My guess, and of course, he's on the line, I believe, is with that being the most expensive, going up an extra $10 is probably makes it more prohibitive for people to participate.
At least for our youth programs, we don't want to throw up barriers.
Or at least
And a number like that is tough for a number of our residents that sign up.
I'm okay with helping our residents. That's who pay the taxes. Money we're spending. I was referring to the non-residents.
Okay. So I wanted to cover the fee schedule. We didn't have that last time.
Yeah, I'd love to see Recreation talk about the Sports Center walking track fee. $25 a year. We talked about this prior years. I know a lot of that went down because when we implemented the silver sneakers, other one, a lot of the walkers that were seniors no longer off the walking pass, they went with the silver sneaker thing, which from us was advantageous revenue. But just think about that walking track, what it is, what it does, $25 a year.
Double it, triple it,
Yeah, I mean,
quadruple it.
$25 worth of gas.
What's your thought?
I think it ought to be increasing. Been saying that for years to $30, $35 or $40 a year.
What's the Walker Plus?
Walker Plus,
They get to take classes. Walk and track and then they can take classes. That's right.
yeah, at one time the walking track only.
Okay, Bart, sorry about that.
4 fitness classes.
Or you're still on mute.
That became 14 fitness classes.
Right.
And then I think they've realigned it. I would leave that up to Mark and Frank to know, but I think they realigned it. So
Okay, there you go, Bart.
only included yoga and silver fit, what we call silver fit today. But the Walker Plus is the walking track plus any fitness class. Except, it seems like
How do
it's
they
one or
keep
two
track?
exceptions.
Who keeps track of it?
On your card. And then the front desk is supposed to be monitored. On the exact science.
Mr. Comlander, can you hear us? It's supposed to be at Fields.
Bart, can you hear Bart?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go
Yes,
ahead.
sir.
Go ahead, Bart.
I think there's some questions about the cheerleading, and I'm out here at the ballpark in a concession stand, so I apologize. But one of the costs of the cheerleading difference is that their uniforms are paid by the parents. The city does not pay that. There's no cost coming out of the budget for the city for that. The only thing the city provides for the cheerleading is pom-poms. And I think the mayor answered the question about that. I was trying to answer that question. I think that was being asked.
Well, one of the questions that was being asked was there's only a $10 differential between resident and non-resident, whereas the others are all $20.
Yeah, but I think the cost of just your other sports, Mr. Allgood, I'll look at that tomorrow or Monday and have that answer for you. But I believe that was because cheerleading so inexpensive because we're putting the private why, and we haven't raised that in quite some time. So expensive for the girls.
That's what I had said as well, is that it's the most expensive sport. Therefore, you probably raise it $10 because it is the most expensive sport.
Why is it the most expensive?
Because that.
Right. We'll just try
Right.
So we're just trying to help the parents out because those uniforms are about $150 a piece.
And the mayor is just asking a question about the walking track, being a $25 fee. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm probably agreeance to raising that. It's pretty cheap, and what we were trying to do is coming back from COVID, which I think we're out of that now. I think that's definitely something that we can look at and raising per year. But you do have a lot of senior adults that use that, and that silver fit that we use helps pay that. But some, we just have folks who just walk that are middle age as well, that we can definitely go up on that. And the increase in that is usually in the winter months when people usually use that walking track. That's something we can definitely, bump up if council chooses to do that. If that's answering the question.
Yeah, I guess of the 14 years the sports center's been out there, what's the last time the walking pass has gone up?
We never went up. It's always been since the day we opened that price.
Is that true of the other fees that we charge our memberships?
Mayor, I have to look back. I don't think we really raised that either. We were trying to stay comparable with other places around town that are similar to the sports center, like the Y. And it may have been a slight increase probably about 8 years ago, but it hasn't been increased that as either. And once again, we were trying to get folks back from COVID and build our memberships up. That's something definitely we could look at as well. That's a pretty cheap deal with the walking pass. I agree. We need to probably bump that up.
Considering Walker Plus is $180 a year, walking track only, if you bumped it up to $50 a year.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
$49.95. But they run hard.
I was thinking 47.86.
48.7.
Okay. Just remember these are the people that are on fixed income.
So we definitely want to change that one to 50 or
I think he was going to look at it. So he wants to go back and talk to the sports center manager, I'm sure.
Mr. Comlander, would you, as you look through all of your fees, are there any others that you can think of off the top of your head that should be looked at?
I would go up maybe in football. That is our most expensive sport, and lacrosse. A lacrosse helmet's running right now around $120. A football helmet's right under $100. So, and we're having to buy that every 2 to 3 years. We also have to send those helmets back to get reconditioned. It's almost cheaper to buy a helmet than send back to get reconditioned. Simpsonville Rec last year sent theirs back to get reconditioned. They didn't get them back. They had to use another city's helmets because of just a shortage of workers to do the reconditioning part of the helmets. So probably I would do football for sure and basketball as well, just because simply the uniforms and the referees and just the staff that it takes to operate it. You've got 2 referees and a scorekeeper. And so that's a initial cost too. And so I think we definitely need to go up folks outside the city. I will try to keep it a little bit cheaper for the people in the city. Simply my recommendation or my thoughts.
Do you all at the end of the season ever take and kind of look at your margins on what, none of them are necessarily profitable, but which sports margins are a bit better on cost to the city?
I would say basketball I would say basketball, but we've got to come up with a better idea. There's so many zip codes in Mauldin, and it's hard for us, and we're really working hard to make sure we're charging people, out of city rates. When you're signing online, you could just put a Mauldin address, and there's no way to check that. And that's something that we're really looking at, that I've noticed, that, you could just use a Mauldin address and it'll be fine. So that's something we need to look at. And we're looking at some new rec software as well that can help us with that. So, but I would say basketball, because that's one of our biggest sports, and then probably flag football, because that's becoming our one of our biggest sports in the spring.
Well, and I think that would be an important number for you guys to analyze at the end of each season. What did that sport cost you, and what did you revenue from it? And help make better decisions on, if I'm not suggesting this, it's just if there's a sport that you're, losing 200% of what's being put into it, then maybe that's a sport we start looking at and say maybe we'd be better served applying those fields or manpower or whatever it is to a different sport. So I would encourage at the end of each season, or annually, monthly, whatever you do, to take those numbers and really assess and analyze if there are sports that are better for the city's pocketbooks than others.
Or on the fees.
Or sure.
Correct. And we started soccer this year, and so that was another increase this year. But once we bought the initial goals, because the city for such a long time got out of the soccer, doing soccer, so we had no goals. So that was our initial cost from the beginning of this year. So we won't have that cost. So I get what you're saying, and we'll definitely do that.
I was just getting ready to ask you about that.
Hey, Bart, this is Holly.
Hey, Holly.
Can you make sure that I get the numbers for the soccer, because that's not on this fee schedule and I need to add it?
Okay. Will do.
Okay, thanks.
Any more questions for Mr. Cumlander while we have him on phone?
So does golf, it doesn't have a resident, non-resident difference? It's just for play.
I didn't hear that.
I'm sorry, I say on golf, that's just one price, no matter where you live.
Yes, ma'am. That's just it's called Grow Golf Now. We just offer that. It's just a website in the city. It's no money out of the city. It's just they do that at the Y and at the here at the city, and it's just a website link to go to them. It's really not sanctioned by the city. It's just a link to kind of offer. It looks like we offer it, but we really don't. And so it's called Grow Golf Now, but the city is no money's coming out of the city budget to do that program.
Thank you.
It's basically a link. If you want to sign your child or grandchild up, actually my youngest does it. He does it right now, and so they go on Sunday afternoons and they go to each course. And they play the first 6 holes, and so that we thought that was a good thing to do, just have an extra program, and we really don't have to touch it.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I think we covered all the schedule. Any other questions, comments? Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Go back to page 50 on our cultural center fees, event fees, things like that. We may want to, what we're looking at for next year, but also some of these fees may be relevant to what's going on right now today. And so we might need for council to consider implementing or considering these fees for the rest of this fiscal year at our cultural center and some of the events going on, or at least have a committee review it because we just started up a maker's market and there is a vendor fee. So does council need to act? Would council want to act between now and June the 30th? Be sure all fees have to be approved by or implemented by this council. Way we currently read it, our department directors are not empowered to make implement fees. And so we need to consider correcting that, or you want it in
Well,
committee?
I'm more than happy to take it in our committee, and then pass it off to finance and policy. My question would be, because really the maker's market is not new. It's the farmer's market rebranded. And instead of every week, it's once a month. But the same type vendors are there. The same purpose exists. So it's just, what was the fee for the farmer's market?
Did we have one?
We charge a fee for the farmer's market, you know?
We didn't have a fee in our fee schedule, which has to be drafted by ordinance, correct? All fees the city charges has to be done by
I don't
ordinance.
think it's an ordinance.
Well, there's language in the budget ordinance that says, by approving this budget, we're authorizing the levying of, taxes, fees, anything considered. I think for the purposes of the cultural center, it's the fee amounts that are there, that I would recommend council. So that's what's practical.
If we could have Kiera come to a committee and kind of talk about the thought process behind the fees, or we could just move it forward.
Earliest we can move it forward, if y'all wanted to consider it, would be, and if you've got enough data and enough numbers and you're comfortable with it, we will have a special council meeting Monday night. So we could add it to the committee of the whole towards the end. We didn't have time to go through a committee. I'm throwing out options. I'm one way or the other.
This is just my policy. To me, these are inconsequential amounts currently. So I would say roll with it. Let's have it in the next batch, which will hopefully be approved in the next 2 months. And you're only talking a couple of things that would be, am I wrong in there? There's only a couple of things that would be.
I was gonna say, in dealing with these cultural center fees, we also received some that are not in here, that detail ticket prices for different events that I will need to add, so you can accept those as well. So those are not currently here. And I apologize, but I just got them before we sent this out, so. I mean, after we sent it out.
It's probably premature to try to do anything on Monday night. I'm fine.
I'm wondering what other cities charge, like, for their makers market, like Greer. I know that Mama Patricia, the Italian sweets woman, she quit coming to Mauldin's and was going to Greer's, and I don't know if that's because maybe Greer's just, maybe their markets are more successful, maybe they have more people. Bless her heart, she's been in the hospital, so she hasn't been able to do anything, but anyway, not have anything to do with this, but just wondering where we are in line with other cities. And as I was walking through the Makers Market, I kept thinking, okay, if they pay $30 and they don't sell anything, they've lost $30 today. So
It's $30 per market.
I'm sorry.
It's $30 per market.
Right. So I don't know. I don't know. I saw you and I saw a few other people. I didn't see anyone that I knew, but I don't know how many more people came after that. how successful our neighbors were.
The Saturday market in Greenville, for a farmer slash producer slash grower slash co-op is $30 a week or prepay for the full season, 25 markets, $675. A crafter is $35 weekly or $790 to prepay for the full season. A food processor, reseller, commercial vendor is $40 weekly, $900 prepay.
And there are tons of people who go to those,
Exactly, and they've been around for a long time.
right,
Remember, not too long ago, we didn't have anything.
right.
So this is a startup venture, if you will, for those of us in the private sector know what startup ventures are. And so,
Travelers Rest, they actually have theirs broken out by where you're spaced.
Prime
Like
spots.
if you're, the weekly, the summer market is $30 to $35 if you're in the pavilion. Festival Lawn, $25 a week. Food trucks are $40. The fall market is in the pavilion, $25 a week. There's no festival lawn, and food trucks are 10% of sales. So that gives you an idea.
So we're pretty much.
And they do a 10% discount for upfront payment for the full summer season.
I'd love to see this be a topic of discussion in the Economic Development Committee. And then obviously, we're getting more popular for people to come. So. Versus where we used to have to beg people to show up, like food trucks.
Well, and band credits here with the reason that the popularity grew was because we moved it to Tuesday, because nobody does anything on Tuesday night. Pretty much the one night of the week that was open.
I think it's also difficult to.
Yeah. And I think it was a topic of discussion between the three cities to try not to step on each other's toes as to what day they had their farmers market on, and we were not competing as a farmers market. Baker's Market seems to be the term this year for several cities that rebranded as Baker's Market because it wasn't corn and tomatoes. It was what you saw Tuesday night.
Okay. Are we good on, what is it?
Are we moving on?
I think we're moving on. Staff has some homework. All right, last item.
Chamber. I got some questions.
Okay.
Okay, so as I was looking through this, 2019 and 2020 were pretty similar. One of the questions I had was, I thought the chamber did more fundraising events than just the golf tournament. I thought the oyster roast was a fundraiser. So that concerns me. Let me see that on here. I only saw the golf tournament, which was about the same. The same amount of fundraising, less maybe $1,900 or so. Yeah, but it was 2020. But the other thing that concerns me is chamber activities are not broken out. So I don't know what they're spending the money on. And the fact that 2019, their chamber activities were less than 2020 when everything was shut down. So those are questions that I have. We don't obviously have 2021's tax returns to look at. And I just don't know that I can get behind giving them an extra 15,000 for a part-time person. So it's kind of what I was going on. So, not knowing where the chamber activities, what they're spending that on. And additional fundraising events that may or may not be. Those are my concerns.
I think if we make the additional investment, that there are expectations that go along with it, which includes the exact detail that you're talking about. And not just an email, but a presentation. We need to be hearing from them monthly. But we also need that year-end accounting and accountability that shows what's going on if we make that investment. It can't just say fundraising or other activities.
Not to us anyway. But the other thing that on the
But
other
there should be
side,
more detail in the.
well, there should be. I mean, I'm surprised that, and maybe there is and we don't have it. I mean, I don't know what the IRS, Carol could probably tell us what more the IRS would want, but my thinking is, we already give them 25,000. There was another, okay, so here was my other that I actually had flagged. In 2019, it shows that the city of Mauldin donated $25,000.
Page 32.
Right. So.
Page 14 for 2019, page 32 for
Okay,
2020.
yes. So 2020, it listed out. And on page 32, it says NA.
Right.
And it's $29,875. So who gave them that?
Yeah.
Did the city give them 25 and somebody else gave them another 4,875?
Okay.
I don't know. But so we give them 25,000. We don't charge them rent. I mean, that is a lot right there. And these are the kinds of things that we're getting. I would not expect, give them another 15,000, but they have to do this because they should be doing this anyway.
I don't disagree.
So
It's what we require of our departments and our department heads.
I'm just thinking that there's a time management issue over there. And if they need someone, how many hours do they want? Somebody 20, 15, 20 extra hours
Part-time.
part-time
That's all we do.
to just, be a receptionist and bookkeeper. I really think there's a time management issue there. So for that reason, and these that I've stated in here, I can't get behind that. Not this year.
Another option is just simply a funding request. I mean, there's no reason we can't say we're willing to do X number, 30, 35, and add on the conditions that we should have been dealing with in the past. Okay. Thoughts?
I have two thoughts, and one I'm going to direct it to you. Last time we said that, you made it sound like that was already understood, or should have been already understood.
It was.
So obviously communication broke down at some point, because obviously they haven't shown it.
Even when they were though, we didn't get the information that we were really asking for.
Well, and we got an email today which seemed to indicate that they won't be doing that. Here's the change.
There hasn't been a meeting for them to show up to in between.
We got that email today at 5 minutes after 5 after the council agenda.
Oh, no wonder I didn't
was
see
published.
I did talk to the beer chamber today, this morning, They operate differently, as David mentioned last time we met, where they get accommodations tax. They get about $20,000 from that city, to which there's also, in talking to them, they get about $8,000 to $10,000 in sponsorship money for events that the chamber puts on. So we would take looking at about 30 right there. Not to mention that whenever they have events, they get fire, police at no cost. Now, I believe they have their own space. I don't think that they get space for free like our chamber does. I also spoke to a chamber member today who's also a member of the Simpsonville Chamber. He says he pays 3 times the amount in Simpsonville than he does here in Mauldin. So they probably are due for a membership dues increase as well. It's probably all overdue. In terms of supporting it, I'm still open to it, but I'm agreeing with everybody else that we would have to lay out protocol in terms of what is expected to be reported to us, how often, and as you pointed out, if we can't find it in these documents, then we'll need something to go on moving forward.
I'm surprised that they weren't here tonight. Hey, you don't have any questions from our presentation last time? I had that chance to look.
Did anyone reach out to them?
Again, I don't know that it was, I don't know that it was crystal clear we were reconvening.
I spoke with Dad at chamber meeting today. And I spoke with Ms. Roy and told her about the meeting this evening. She's having she told me that her husband has some health issue. She's having but just expressed a willingness to do whatever council would like for them to do.
And so, I mean, to that point, when they came to make their argument, a lot of it was dealt with personnel and health issues. And when they presented what they want to do with the money, it's to help support them in that regard. So, I mean, I can have some sympathy toward that if there actually is a large need there for a third person or long term. That's why I was asking some of those questions too, in terms of what are we looking at? Is this a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan? What's the need? But I'm still of the mindset of we can certainly set some parameters in terms of what your membership goals are, the reporting that you're going to be doing to us. That should be dictated based on how much money you're going to receive from the city.
I guess I know when we went back to 2019, at least 2019, when we got the fee, we had a lot of this discussion then, and the expectations were laid out plainly, I thought plainly, and what we'd expect in the future, and we hadn't been getting into this year. And a lot of the things we heard at the last budget meeting, the things they have planned that they want to do, we heard in 2019. They hadn't been done. It is a lot going on with the growth and the staff they have. And Pat, love her to death, and she's worked 16 hours a day. But at some point, you have to delegate and get other people to do. And my analogy to her was like, it's kind of like the Baptist church when you join them. Man, they use you on every committee and they put you on this and you're involved in this. In about 3 years, you burn out. You're still a Baptist, but you don't volunteer for this and this and this and this kind of thing. Yeah. And that's kind of what we hear from some of the members of the chamber. At some point, they just, just can't do it all the time. I got to run my business kind of thing.
Except for Christina, because she had boundless energy.
Yeah.
Yes, I wish I had some.
And if you'll notice, when she shows up, just about her whole staff is there because they want to be. Who knows? But they're there. Fantastic group of people. I did just some rough numbers, and part of that was kind of thing. If you look at what, and I surmised on page 42 that the city of Mauldin was 25,000 of that kind of thing. And I took the numbers off the other pages that showed just what their income was. Give you the example I used on page 9, when it said programs serve contribution, gifts, grants, and similar amounts, the 85,355. I made an assumption that included the 25,000. So I took that 25,000 divided by 85,000, and basically in 2019, what we gave them was 29.28% of their line item 1. And if you look at 2020, it was 20.5%. So I took those and said, okay, if the city has, how many city businesses, in rough numbers now, these are not exact, if we have 850 numbers, 850 city businesses, and we took that, and then I take what the chamber said they had last year was 360 numbers, and Kim said about 70% of them were inside the city. So that comes out to 252. So if you take 252 and divide it by 850, 29.6%. So our contribution is in line with city businesses that are represented within the city chamber. So I don't find that out of line. And I just think that ongoing discussion needs to be with them, that our expectations are a little bit more. And I did see today an email, I think, from Pat, that the ambassador program is moving forward. Coincidental. So I was glad to see that. And then we get the announcement of the calendar, which led me to believe they won't be here Monday. So at this point, I think we need to work together with them. But if you take $25,000 a year, and roughly, in this we kind of ballpark this number a while ago, if the rental space, if the space they're in is roughly worth $1,000 a month, that's $12,000 a year. And that includes their space, their power bill, utilities. They don't pay for any of that. I don't know about the phone system. I have no clue about it. But, so if you add that, then we're basically at $37,000 a month. Plus we pay, the city is a member. We pay $950 a year chamber membership fee. So based on those numbers, I don't see a reason for me to support an additional 15,000.
Would you, and I'm just throwing an option out, let's say what it was, split that in half, 32.5.
How are they gonna pay somebody?
That's for them to worry about. We're making a commitment to them that we understand there's a need, and the city is endorsing Mauldin Chamber in a number of ways, and probably more so than several others, but have the same expectations, increase some funding, and we can leave it alone. I'm just giving options.
Yeah, I support leaving it alone.
I'm open to that. I mean, to me, the number that was given was, I think, 5 years ago, was $25,000 a year. And obviously I want to be able to support them, but again, I'm totally in line with everybody else that reporting has to improve.
What was the membership 5 years ago?
I don't remember what they said. They said that pre-COVID, it was, we said 630. It's now
385.
385. 385.
360. Was a rough number.
Yeah.
Which is,
I think it was 360.
But I don't know the answer to that. That was,
Tap, what are your thoughts? Leave it alone.
One other thing that I didn't hear from the treasurer, which I was hoping to hear from the treasurer, was sort of their financial state. But she said nothing about any of that. And maybe, I thought that maybe she would when Pat said, oh, tell them. but she didn't say anything about finances, so.
Well, I'm good there on that. We can certainly request it. Okay, it's coming on us, but here's
What-
that goes back to what we expect
Yeah,
for the extreme that.
With this net income summary, kind of a report that says that's how much they had over page 38. So.
no, you're fine. No, I could go with it. I could support an adjustment if conditions are met. But I think that there has to be a real commitment for those line items to be there. And there has to be a commitment for a representative to show up to present a report. And us not get something 20 minutes before meeting. I mean, if it's a real partnership, then I want us to be treated like a partner. Because we have 26,000 taxpayers who expect us to maintain our fiduciary responsibility to them. And if we're handing out money with no real accountability, I have a tough time answering to those people how we do it.
I would say this would probably fall under economic development. That'd be for your committee to lay out what our expectations are of the chamber if we do increase this funding.
I believe so. And I don't even know that it necessarily needs to be in a committee meeting. I think it's a sit down
I would agree.
and just say, this is what we want. This is what we need. If we're your partner, you need to treat us this way. Because you also owe it to the people who are making the financial investment in you. To show them what they're getting out of it and what you're doing with their investment. We have to do that.
I think that would be what I propose is increase the funding by half of what stipulations, guidance, and what the expectation is. Not necessarily like you're saying from a committee standpoint, but this needs to be addressed. Because
And if it's not, then that would not be reoccurring money in the following fiscal year budget.
I would agree. I don't want to put an expectation out there without communicating what that expectation is. And that's what concerns me is sometimes we'll expect something and we never communicate what we expected. And so they're sitting there all the way.
I would like to see a breakdown of their expenses. To know where the money went.
Yeah.
I don't
Because
think,
if
and I don't
there's,
think that's an unreasonable thing to ask.
if there's 15,000 that was, well, there's their money.
I don't
So,
think it's unreasonable to ask that monthly, quarterly, whatever the.
well, but I'm saying even going back. What was this money spent on in 2020 when everything was shut down and you have chamber activities? I know they did have the oyster roast. I think it came later and it was outdoors. Is that instead of a fundraiser, is that an activity? I mean, I don't know. These are questions. And so until I have answers, I'm not willing to get behind any kind of money.
I can understand asking for additional data and that I would hesitate to ever try to argue with them that I don't agree with a certain expense on an expense category of a corporate, of an organization that I'm not a member of. Even though we are a member of, we have a representative who goes to those kind of things. Just one more note is that this 25,000 and then if you do another 7,500 is coming out of H&A, which we're already beyond our income projection on the revenue side going out. So we are dipping into the fund balance of H&A. So it's food for thought.
And I'm not saying, all I'm saying is if we see that in their chamber activities, things that could have, we don't know what they are. This is all it says. And it could be that extra 7,500 could have been, you know.
I would have thought
That's all I'm saying.
2021 would have been available, but I don't know. Shouldn't 2021 tax returns be available?
2021?
2021.
Yes, they should.
Well, see, these are dated in April, both of them. April 27th, I think, was 2020.
But April of this year would be 2022.
That'd be 21.
That'd be 21s, but 2020 was, they did it on April 27th of 2021.
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna have behind if I've got file 22s already.
But I would also not expect any more level of detail in 2021 than 2019 or 2020. And
Well, but we could ask.
yeah, and I think that's where it gets back to, we ask, but we have to be very detailed in terms of what the ask is. If we just say provide us more details, they don't know what details to provide. So we need to be very detailed and structured with, this is the report you're going to give us. And it's not going to be a Holly report. Okay? It's not going to be as detailed as this. Probably no one probably can do. But you know what I'm saying? Like it has to provide a certain level of lay it out, fill it in, submit it back, and they work.
I can give you more detail if you'll fund me a part-time person that takes some of the work off, or I can give you more detail. That's just an argument you might hear.
I sent a QuickBooks file to my CPA every quarter. And you can, if my business was a public entity, you could see what goes where and every nickel and every dime.
And they use QuickBooks.
Yeah, I mean, they ought to be able to produce those.
But to be fair, we've not asked them for it. So I think that go back to that. Let's ask.
Well, if that's something that she's willing to go back to 2019, 2020 and just give that breakdown of what the chamber activities were. If we can legally ask for that, I mean, if that's something that we can ask for because they're asking us.
We can ask for it, but she can say no, but at the same
Yeah.
time, they're coming to us asking for an additional.
Right. And for me to feel comfortable doing that for her, I kind of need to see.
That's fair.
What was our next workshop?
It's a good question. There was more to cover than I anticipated. We don't have another one scheduled, do we?
That was a good church.
I'm sorry, you said there was more to come. We didn't get to.
Tonight there was more to cover than I anticipated. Mr. Madden and I will get together. It may be something that would make some sense to do before or after meeting night. Because then we'll have to get on the calendar to be able to do the next council meeting. So I think anticipate an after a committee meeting night or something like that. Do we have anything else we want to leave staff with? I'll leave you guys with thank you for showing up and very available to answer questions. I think that's all I have. Anybody else? Staff, you know what all we're asking for? Seems like a lot more. We'll call it adjourned.
Do we need to tell Cindy to stop getting supper if we're not going to eat it?
I've been sitting over here starving for about an hour and a half.
Yeah, and you need to try that because based on Brandon's suggestion, Cindy expanded our horizons, and that is Caesar's Mediterranean Grill. And it is a steak and cheese sub and a chicken and block cheese sub. So please avail yourself of taking one
Where's that
home.
steak and cheese?
You don't want to-
The meeting is adjourned.
Meeting Michael's up here with adjourned meeting.
Yes, sir, we're adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you.
Uh,